Welcome to the second part of our series where we are going into more depth on the reasons why we left America. If you missed our first part, we'll put a little link somewhere here. We were talking about really grief, wasn't it?
Yeah, the gut emotion reasons why we left was to do with the death of our parents and that really.
Such. And so this episode or video, we're going to delve more into our working life, aren't we?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to look at because we worked in the same industry, we worked in the same place, how that or our experience of that changed over that 15-year period we were living in America, and was one of the reasons why we moved back to the UK. So as we explained in some of our earlier videos, we both worked as teachers in the United States. Susie got her job there as a teacher. She'd originally trained in the UK, and she worked in both the US and the UK and preferred working over there. I fell into it really by accident and found that I enjoyed it and was told that I should pursue it as a career because I was a natural, and that's what I did. So for half the time that we were there, I was working as a substitute teacher in various guises, and also going to college to get my qualifications to become a teacher. And while I was doing that, you were grafting away in various charter schools.
That's right. So as Paul mentioned, I already qualified as a teacher in the UK, and I had taught for about 4 years in a school, same school for the 4 years. I did my training there, and I worked up to be second in the science department. And then I decided I wasn't really enjoying it. I was getting a bit jaded. A lot of that was down to behavior. I felt like teaching in the UK schools was mostly wrangling and persuading the kids that they needed an education rather than trying to inspire them, as we all say we want to do in the teaching world. So I, as an American citizen, took a year and I actually taught. I went through an agency and I taught in North Carolina for a year in a very small rural area. And it is a very different teaching system. I think we'll do a video comparing the two another time. But what it did is opened my eyes to schools where they're very community based. This school, as I said, was very rural and everybody knew everybody. So if anybody tried to skip school, they phoned the school and said, "We've just seen so and so."
No, this was a public school.
This was a public school,
not a charter school. More about that later.
Yeah, and I even had parents sit in classes whenever the student misbehaved. Like the parent was quite happy to sit in there and humiliate him, really. So it was a different experience. I actually got to teach, but not just that I got to teach. I actually got to teach a variety of different subjects. So in the UK, I had trained to teach all the 3 sciences: biology, chemistry, physics. But over in America, I that sort of opened up into other subjects as well, which we'll talk about a bit later. But I didn't stay there. I came back to England, and then we met and married and all that business. So
all that business.
When we moved to the US for the start of our 15 years there, I had secured a job in a charter school. And a charter school is still a public school, as in it's not private. Like they can't pick and choose who they want to go to the school.
It receives public funding,
but not as much public funding as the public schools. It doesn't get money for the buildings and all that business, but it still gets money per student, doesn't it, to teach them?
Yeah, the money from the state that would go to normally a traditional public school is allocated to charter school.
Yes.
The idea of this being
there's a bit more freedom and flexibility. So charter schools, they still have to follow state standards. There are standards in what has to be taught, but there's a bit more flexibility in what kind of courses they want to run. If they wanted to have more of science or STEM sway or foreign languages, or if they wanted to bring in Latin for people or Chinese, or if they wanted to focus on PE or health, you
Or
know,
the
or
arts
the
or
arts
something like
or,
that. Yeah.
music, whatever, band. There's just a bit more flexibility. And because of that, they probably wouldn't have the full range of courses that were available in a public school. In our cases, we didn't even have proper buildings sometimes. We didn't have like football fields, American football fields. We didn't have basketball courts, that sort of stuff. That
Yeah.
is what you'll find in most American public schools.
Yeah. Now, my experience of teaching in a public school in the US is different to Susie's, because I taught in a public school as part of my teacher training, and I was embedded in a school in Charlotte for as part of a year, which was a public school that had a bit of a reputation.
Yeah, they call them Title One because it's probably the poorer area of the city,
Yeah.
and it's got a higher ethnic population, I'd say.
Yeah, and it really was. It was like working at the UN, the different types of people that worked in there as well. And having experienced the years as a substitute teacher, working in charter schools, and then working as a student teacher in this public school, it really felt like a different world. Think of more leading towards your idea of what an American public school would be from TV or from movies. That's what it was more like. On the whole, we have to say behavior wasn't really an issue.
Yes, we're not talking about students that were throwing chairs out of windows or attacking teachers and things like that. In charter schools, a lot of parents choose to take their children out of public schools and go to charter schools because they feel that it's a smaller class environment. There may be fewer students per classroom. In our case, the school that we both ended up teaching in had a higher level of rigor. It was seen as a college prep school, so it kind of emphasized in the US to get into college they have to sit these exams called the ACT and the SAT. So they were trying to promote students to higher level courses, to more advanced courses and things like that. So our charter, saying that, we couldn't just choose the cream of the crop.
No,
it wasn't that kind of. It's not that kind of
that's
situation.
That's what public schools do. No, you
parents,
don't sit an entrance exam to get into them.
Right.
It's more on a lottery, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's no, you're not, the parents aren't charged to send their students there. That's a private school. That's what a proper private school is in the United States. So I started teaching in a charter school, and I was there for about 4 years. And you were doing some substitute teaching there.
Some
that's where you fell into teaching there.
Some long-term
and as I said before, I didn't just get to. I started off just teaching biology there, and very quickly after the first year, I went into teaching advanced biology. So they call it AP Advanced Placement, which is more of a college level, so the first year of their university. I also started teaching marine biology, and I started teaching biotechnology, which is kind of a combination of some chemistry and some biology. I worked my way up to be head of department there, but it doesn't quite suit. The school was growing in the wrong direction for me, so I chose to change. But I was still very interested. I still loved teaching. I felt that I could really engage with the students and inspire them in some respects. Moved to another school for a year. That didn't quite work out. So I ended up at the school that we've left, the school that Paul then joined me in Charlotte. And that was brilliant. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I came in from the ground and I could work my way and craft the science department the way that I felt I wanted it to go. And that was by offering many courses. So at this last school, I actually ended up teaching biology, chemistry, physics, some at the advanced level chemistry, advanced level biology, advanced environmental science, marine biology,
We did astronomy.
Everything, astronomy. They have this thing called Earth Environmental Science, which is kind of a little bit of geography. What would be geography
Yeah,
over here in the
yeah.
UK, combined with some of the sciences that you would get, I guess, in Key Stage 3. So it's
I would
like a
think
bit
so.
of
Yeah.
ecology and meteorology and
Well,
astronomy and things
there
like
was a
that.
lot of overlap between the course that I taught, which was AP Human Geography. There was many of the topics that we covered that were similar, but
Right,
again, it's considered a higher level than
right.
the standard high school classes.
So I was in my element. I absolutely loved it. I, again, as head of department, I helped to mentor new teachers coming in and could do all the experiments that I wanted to do. We actually got to a point where I got to help design and build the labs that we
Mm-hmm.
had in our school, because we started out in trailers, really, didn't we?
Mm.
So that was great. It was everything that I wanted as a teacher. It was hard work. Don't if you are a teacher, if you know a teacher, we work really hard. A lot of planning, a lot of hours spent outside of school, but we did it because we loved it.
Yeah,
And you entered the world of teaching world history
yeah,
mostly.
yeah. The subject I taught the most was world history, which initially was very interesting because they're taught usually world history still with an American angle, and so I was able to bring a foreign perspective to it, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And then I was given the opportunity to teach AP Human Geography as well, and I taught anthropology, astronomy,
Archaeology.
archaeology, civics, and economics, and finally in the last year that I taught American history as well, which I'd done as a student, but I was a bit rusty on that. And I enjoyed all of it, really.
And that's one of the reasons why we knew we didn't want to come back to the UK to teach over here, because over here it's a lot more prescriptive.
Yeah,
That you are given a curriculum and you kind of have to teach just that. And not that we're knocking the British system. It's just in
it's just
America
different. That's all.
we had standards, but we had the flexibility and freedom to choose how we wanted to present those standards. We could go into a lot more depth. Like I could go into a lot of the history of science, bringing in the characters, your Newtons and your Curies and your all these scientists. I could, in some respects, we kind of bounced off each other, because
Mm,
I could talk about the science of the Industrial Revolution to the students that you had just had the year previous
yeah,
to learn all that. So it was really, as a teacher, you had the capacity to really build in such enrichment and
yeah,
engagement and excitement that you could really push through your own passion, like why I love science or
yeah.
why he loved history, could really come across in your lessons,
And
couldn't they?
certainly, like Susie said, the areas that you're passionate about, you could really go into them, and I think they picked up on our enthusiasm and our passion, because it's those, when they come back to see you as they do, those are the bits that they say they remember the best.
Yes.
Um, and
And also,
so
I would say also we had a lot of personal experience.
yeah,
I was a scientist before I went into the world of teaching, and that helped me connect on a different level.
hmm,
And I've always loved science from a child. But then also, Paul, you had a lot of you have a lot of personal connection to the history that you teach,
yeah,
and I think those were the bits that students came back and said they really remembered the bit on the First World War, the
mm,
what was it, Accrington Pals and things like
yeah,
that, because they were personal stories. So I'm not saying that you can't do some of that in the UK system. I personally just felt like it's just not as flexible. You
yeah.
just don't have that flexibility. And also, there's not the same scrutiny. Um, I feel like there could be a bit more scrutiny in the US systems. I'm talking
Yeah,
about we don't have like an Ofsted version,
I
things like that.
I think that looking back at the history of education in the US, it is very state orientated. There is Oh, there was. I don't know if it's still, they've got rid of it, but a Department of Education, Federal Department of Education. But that was relatively new. That only came about in the 1970s, I think.
And that
Each
doesn't.
state was in charge of its own educational system, which could lead to the way that their universities are structured as well. I think to try and, but that's something for another
Yes,
story.
another day. Another day. Another story for another
I
day.
think there is a fairly standard across like the examining boards, like the AP and
Right.
things like that, and the SATs. But the way they are taught is prescribed more at the state level than at
Yes.
a federal level.
Yeah, the Department of Education doesn't actually have anything to do with curriculum.
Yeah.
It's more about funding. Really.
Yeah. And
Anyway,
making sure the title subjects
yes, that everybody has the same opportunities. So anyway, we're now going to talk about why that passion sort of led
Fizzled.
to a bit of disillusionment.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to stress that this is nothing to do with the school that we taught at all.
No, it
or
was
the people we taught with. This is nothing to do with that at all.
It was a fantastic school with the other teachers there were fantastic. The admin was fantastic. They couldn't do enough for you. I think it was more down to it was a change.
Yes.
It was like someone threw a switch.
Now, and that switch really was COVID.
Yeah, I think COVID was certainly the way to, as a line in the sand. And there was pre-COVID and there's post-COVID. And it's difficult really to encompass the entire change because it was more of a general thing.
Right. I think we had mentioned this in our last video that during COVID and the years of lockdown and the couple of years afterwards, we didn't notice a lot because we were just kind of swimming upstream and just getting through each day. But as Paul said, like we started to notice just a shift. And again, we're not saying that this is anybody's fault. There's any reason for it. We don't quite know the reasons for it.
If we knew that, then we'd be raking it in.
Yeah. But what happened is the level of student apathy kind of just increased every year, didn't it? And what we mean by that is that they weren't, well, you kind of encompassed it as there was just no sense of curiosity.
Yeah, it was as if apathy had been increased and curiosity had been decreased in proportion to one another. And obviously that we're not talking about every single student. It was just an underlying trend that seemed to grow post-COVID.
Right.
And we tried to counter it with different techniques, different methods to try and reignite and re-engage. But
because that's what we do as teachers, you constantly are reinventing how you teach things. But it seemed to be the more we worked to try and either get creative in a project idea or come up with an assignment that was interesting or quirky or a different way of bringing material to the students, the less and less engaged they became. And it started to be quite demoralizing, really, didn't it?
When you've put a lot of effort into something and you're expecting them to at least match that or surpass it, and all they do is phone something in at the end just to scrape a grade, and then expect the world for what they've done.
That's where it all started to fall apart, where it wasn't about learning the material, it wasn't about engaging with the subject, trying to spark some kind of moment. The students really, again, in general terms, the students just seem to care about the grade and not about the material.
And to a certain extent, you've always had that.
Right.
The one that's grade, and you had the students who were apathetic and just not interested. But it just seemed that they started to increase. That become more of a norm than an individual thing.
And it was always, as Paul said, you come to something that was creative. I created this assignment when I got onto electron configurations, and I made it all about cracking a code because I kind of linked it to the Enigma machine. I brought in a personal side of it because my father used to work in codes and ciphers and things like that. And so initially it was great because it was they had to come up with, it was essentially a take on two truths and a lie. So they come up with two truths about themselves and a lie. It's all been decoded by a partner and they have to guess which is the lie. And I started off with my two truths and a lie. So it's a way of trying to them to get to know me a bit better, me to get to know them a bit better. And initially it was brilliant. It was a really good assignment. But that last couple of years, it
After
was just
COVID.
the minimum amount of work and nothing interesting. It was just like, I play football, I have a dog, and it's it just, what was the point? What was the point of putting all the effort in and building it all up? And yeah, it was just becoming a point where we as teachers either worked harder or cared more about their education than they
Yeah.
did.
And at the same time that was happening, on a broader level across the states, there was a narrow band of parents who were more interested in political things
Mm-hmm.
that began to exert a degree of force upon the way things were taught in schools.
Part of this culture war that they talk about a lot of.
They were a small but incredibly vocal minority, and it began to impinge on everything we taught, even science.
Yes.
You would expect it from subjects like English and from what I taught, because there are controversial things in there. But science is science. It is what it is.
Yes. And we used to have a couple of parents that would push against things like the teaching of evolution or the Big Bang Theory or something like that from a religious perspective. But this was, as Paul said, and this was not our parents. We're not saying it was our parents.
It wasn't our school. But our school had to be prepared for that.
Right.
And to be able to be ready for it, it took a lot of work, because you had to include a full curriculum. You had to include even down to quotations from works that we're going to use
or video clips,
or video clips or whatever,
or readings,
or
or
if you're going to show
was.
a movie, you had to say what movie it was from and everything.
And this all had to be posted so that parents could read it ahead of time, so they knew what their students were getting at, so they could essentially complain about it if they wanted to.
And in all the time we were there, up until the time we left, this had been over the last 2 years. Not a single parent had shown any interest in any of this. But the school was aware that it could happen, and we had to be ready for it. And frankly, it kind of draws the enjoyment away from it when you're having to think about, well, should I do that? It's going to create more work for me if these. Am I being controversial? I mean, I don't. In my mind, I'm not being controversial, but somebody could misconstrue things.
Exactly. You start to self-censor, don't you? And then you feel like, well, then if I can't teach the way that I want to teach, then I'm not enjoying the teaching.
Yeah.
So essentially,
that combination of the increase in apathy and disinterest, added to having to put everything that you do down for scrutiny, it just became too much, didn't it?
Yes. And so I think what we're saying is that a job that we loved to do, the job that we would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, I've got a brilliant idea for a lesson, turned into, oh God, we've got to go to work today. Oh, I've got to do this today, got to do that today. And that's not what we went into this job to do. So, and we knew that because we felt this way, we were not giving our best to our students.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's what we do the job for. We do the job because we want to give them the best opportunities to start their life. And it was a disservice to them, as well as us and the school, just to keep going, to, watch the clock and get a paycheck.
We've all met those people in not just teaching, but in every work environment that are just punching the clock, waiting for the retirement, and we didn't want that.
We didn't want to be those people. Yeah. That's right. So that's really the long story of why we also, like the world that we were living in, the work world that we were living in, also contributed to us wanting to move back to the UK. It was the right time.
Yeah.
So in the next, I don't know, it could be 3, 4, or 5, I'm not really sure, parts to this series of why we left America, we're now going to delve into, I think we're kind of just in broad terms saying America changed.
Yes, I think in that period when we first arrived there in 2010 to when we left in 2025, America went through a lot of changes, and some of those were the reasons why we left.
Yes. So hopefully you'll stick with us because, as I said, this is us trying to give you a more in-depth reason why we
Yeah.
left America, because it's multifaceted.
Don't worry, the cheeky swear words ones and things like that will be peppered between these, sandwiched between them to lighten things up.
But if you have any experiences similar to this, or if you have any questions about teaching in America, or have similar
stories,
come to similar conclusions in the world of teaching, because I know there is quite a high burnout in the subject in the teaching world because it is quite intense. Drop us a line. Give us a comment.
We love reading your comments.
We do. We really do enjoy engaging with you. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe, like, share it with anybody you think would be interested, and we will see you next time round.
Take care.
Cheers for now.
Bye for now.